And welcome to our meeting. Yeah, is this recording? Yeah, it is. Okay, so wait, I left. Okay, now we go. Okay, everyone. So today we want to move a little bit forward with understanding the prayer of Keva, which is the more institutionalized prayer versus the more spontaneous prayer, which is kavanah. Kavanah means intention, means something that comes out of your heart. You have something that's going in your life, and you're under stress, and you're asking God, help me, show me guidance, heal my friend. Something that's spontaneous and is on the spot, and that is the prayer that we see in the Bible. And we said last time that after the destruction of the temple, they started to imitate the sacrifices that were in the temple and to make a more fixed prayer, which is called the institutionalized prayer, which is you pray 3 times a day. And that mechanism of praying the same kind of text, not a spontaneous text, is sort of like the invention of Judaism after the destruction of the temple. And we said that the way you would worship God in ancient times was through sacrifices. And when the temple was destroyed, basically the sages, the rabbis were like saying, now that we don't have a temple, what will happen to our religion? What will happen to our way of worshiping God? And they came up with this thought that you could say a fixed prayer and it will be as if you have sacrificed to God, because it's something that will come out of your heart, but it is a fixed text. So we see that there's a tension between saying the same text over and over again till it becomes a routine, with the more spontaneous prayer. And so that's one thing that we've talked about. The other thing that we talked about is we looked into those fixed prayers, and we saw that there's a format to it, and there are 3 blessings. Please turn off your cell phone. There are 3 blessings always at the beginning, 3 blessings at the end, and the sandwich in between is what changes. It's either 18 blessings on a weekday, it's 7 blessings on a Shabbat, or it's 9 on Rosh Hashanah, and we saw how that works. And we saw how that prayer is called Amidah, which means standing. It's a prayer you need to say while you're standing. In a different lesson, we'll talk about the choreography of the prayers. When you stand, when you sit, you go back sometimes, you bow, all these things, when and why and how we do them. We're going to talk about that later. And then in last week, we talked about the Shema and its blessings, and we saw how the Shema is one of the most important prayers in our tradition, and how it's not just the Shema. There are blessings before the Shema, there are blessings after the Shema, and the Shema itself is not just that one sentence, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We saw that there's 3 paragraphs from the Bible that go along with it, and it constitute the Shema prayer. Okay, so when people say Shema, you need to understand, do they mean just the Shema, just that sentence, or do they mean also the blessings before and after and those 3 paragraphs? Okay, and what we want to do today is go through the other prayers that are in the Siddur, that are in the prayer book, and sort of like get a better understanding of that. So we have here a Siddur. Yes, a question?
A question.
Yeah.
Are the three sets of prayers that we say, or that are said, or that were, when this was first occurring, without the temple, people would pray on their own. Were they at specific times, like 9 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Is there a more or less definite?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, and basically in our chart that I see still exists here from 2 weeks ago, that's nice. Okay, so we said that the morning prayer, okay, is shacharit, okay, and you have to do it. Did we write the actual? Yeah, right. I think we said sunrise to 12 o'clock, okay, but only until 10 o'clock you get points, okay? Because you're supposed to do within the first 4 hours of the day. Now, if sunrise would be 5, so it would be till 9. If sunrise would be 7, it would be till 11, okay?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was this basic set interval when you should do it. Was this also something that would make people feel that they were not alone, even if they were saying the prayers alone, that everybody who was observing
I mean,
was doing it more or less at
the
the
fact
same
that
time?
everyone is doing it at these hours at the same time, it's sort of like if you're a religious Jew, sometime in the morning you're going to have to do this. It's part of your morning routine, and you know that other people do it. So it gives you a good feeling. Although the better way to do it is in a minyan, is to come and and observant Jews try to find a minyan. Okay, I have to admit I'm an observant Jew. I don't always go to a minyan every morning. Actually, I don't go in the morning. Okay? I do pray every morning. Okay, I put on my tefillin. I put on my talis. I say these blessings, the Shema and the Amidah. But the preferred way to do it is with a group, with a group of 10 men, or in the conservative and reform movement, 10 men and women.
Is there a minyan in this area?
Yeah. I think they have a Chabad.
They do get 10 men
Yeah,
or 10 people?
Chabad.
10 men.
Yes. Wait, I just want to complete the morning. So it's sunrise to 10. You could still do to 12, but you don't get you don't get the mitzvah of the points for the mitzvah. Let's say it that way. The afternoon prayer is from around 1. It's like when the sun starts going towards descend. Okay, so it's so it's like an hour after that. Okay.
Well, Rabbi?
Yeah. And that's until evening. Okay, and the evening prayer begins at dusk, and you can do it all the way up to before the first light, before dawn light. Okay, although it's preferred to do it right at the evening. Yes.
So, but on a weekday where there's a holiday, you would frequently go beyond 10, 11 o'clock.
Well, but the Shema is usually done before that, okay? And if you start a little bit before, so you are kind of okay. Okay, it's like on the border. Okay, it's like these rules weren't made for Californians that like to wake up. They like to wake up late. Okay.
Another question.
Yeah.
Since we're going through the prayers, what is this distinction between the prayers we're doing in the Amidah versus Birchot HaShachar first thing?
Oh, so today we're going to talk about those prayers. Okay. Yeah.
How does this apply to women's prayer?
So there in traditional sources there are two opinions. There's the Sephardi opinion and the Ashkenazi opinion. Okay. The Sephardi opinion, again, not all Sephardi rabbis, but many of the Sephardi rabbis say that women are not obligated to pray. and therefore they are exempt from that. So they don't have to go at all to the synagogue, but they sort of like they should go so to be part of the community, etc. In the Ashkenazi sources, again, some say like the Sephardi, but many of them say that women are obligated to pray either 3 times a day like men, but they can't form the minyan, or they have to pray 1 prayer a day, which is the shacharit. Okay, so there are different opinions within that.
Is the shacharit?
And in conservative movement, it's not like that. It's egalitarian. So women are obligated, just like men, to pray 3 times a day. Oh, hi, Anya.
Hi.
Hi, everyone, please meet Anya. She is new to Congregation Ner Tamid, and she is our new education and clergy coordinator. So,
Nice to meet you all.
hi.
Hi.
She just started 2 days ago, so good luck, and she'll probably be in touch with you over different things. And if you, okay, so that answers that question.
There is another one, the shacharit includes the middle section, which is the Shmoneh Esrei prayers.
Right.
Were there any changes in those prayers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The prayers have evolved over the years, okay? And the blessings have changed. And there are different versions that we see that in the ancient land of Israel, they prayed in a certain way. And in Babylonia, where the biggest, colony of Jews was in ancient times in Babylonia, they prayed in a different way as well. So we have different versions of that prayer. I will devote actually a whole lesson on the differences between those prayers and trying to see where they come from, because they come from different ideological perspectives.
Do we know about when the communal synagogue prayers actually got started? The rabbis are discussing it, but when did it actually become common?
So it's a big debate about among the researchers, because lately there's some scholars that say that even while the temple was standing, people started praying in synagogues, but not in the way that we know, probably more in the form of reading from the Torah. Okay, so they would get together. The market day was Monday and Thursday, and then they said if everyone's at the market, let's, so they established like synagogues, next to the market or some sacred spaces, and then they would read from the Torah. So people sort of like, get accustomed to reading Torah, etc. And probably somewhere along there, they had like prayers that had to do with the Torah and maybe additional prayers. The actual time that they started praying in an institutionalized way is also not clear. But the very clear evidence we have is after the destruction of the temple. But some people argue that it even started before. Okay, and there were some of these prayers were done at the temple by the priest after they were sacrificing things. So they did some of these prayers as well. Okay, so they adapted some of those. They sort of like they imitated what the prayers that were going on in the temple, and they brought them into the synagogues after the destruction of the temple.
Well, isn't there archaeological evidence that said there were, whether you want to call it a synagogue, but places even when the temple was, because people couldn't always get to Jerusalem?
Right, exactly. So they have archaeological evidence that places like that existed even while the temple was standing, but it's not clear if they were served for praying or just for reading the Torah. So, which would be like 2 different parts of the service. Yeah.
Is aside from, I guess, absolute fealty to God and the term peace, which runs through most, or if not all, of the prayers, are there other dominant disciplines besides God and peace through all of these?
You mean like different themes?
Are there any other key themes?
Oh, key themes.
You can't get much cleaner than
Yeah, no. So yeah, there are different themes to the prayer. We usually say that there is prayer which is thanking God for what He's given us. So there are a lot of prayers like that, like Modeh, like I thank God for giving me back life. Then another theme is asking God. Okay, we're asking God, to heal someone. So that's a different form of prayer. That's a very common theme. Another form is just praising God. Okay, praising God for, which is different than thanking. Just praising Him for creation, for what He is, etc. A very strong theme is the love between God and the people of Israel. It's Valentine's Day today, so that's not a Jewish holiday. Okay, but we could talk about that, but about how God loves the people of Israel and protects them, and so that's a very big theme as well. And as you mentioned, peace and the longing for peace is a very big theme as well, and also following God's commandment. Sort of like telling God, give us the strength, give us the stability, give us the security in life, so we could follow your ways. Yes.
So just to Larry's question, there's something in archaeology that's a proven temple in the lower upper Egypt in Elephantine in an island. There was a second temple that was at the time of the original first temple, and that was a very kind of heretical, controversial point, but it was a concurrent, very large population of Jews by Aswan in an island called Elephantine.
I think it's Alexandria.
No, way south. I'm sorry, yes, south. I was getting
okay.
in Upper Egypt.
Right. There were a few. The Jewish community in Egypt was a very strong, very wealthy community, and they had a few of these temples that were sort of like competing with the main temple in Jerusalem, and they had a lot of disputes around that. But we have a lot of evidence about that. And also in Alexandria, they had a huge synagogue as well. Okay, so now we're going to open up the Siddur. There are many Siddurim. Siddur means, you know the word Seder?
Order.
Okay, right, order, right? We have like Passover Seder. Okay, so it means an order. There's a certain order to things. When we do the Passover Seder, we have a certain order that we start with the wine, the matzah, etc. We do the vegetables, we eat, we bless, the afikoman. It's a very, very clear order. So that's the word seder. So the same is with the siddur. Okay, it's fixed prayers. It's mesudar. It's in an orderly fashion, and this is a very, very modern siddur. The more ancient siddurim, they don't have a cover necessarily. They don't have a a list of contents. It just starts with the first prayers, because people were much more versed back then and knew sort of like where to look, and it wasn't such an issue for them. And a lot of these prayers people really know by heart as well. The conservative movement has also gone through different phases of Siddurim. I don't know if anyone here remembers the black Silverman.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I was just a baby when it was like used by all communities.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, the black, right? You remember the black Silverman Siddur? Okay, or maybe I am getting old and I don't realize it. Yeah, that's also an option.
Our
Yeah.
children were given the prayer books when they had their bar or bat mitzvah, so all of us have those prayer books if our children have.
That's beautiful. I actually just told them, why don't we give these to the bar and bat mitzvah boys? I think that would be
we
what?
always-
No, we give them a machzor.
Yeah,
But
what,
I would like them to get a siddur.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
going back a ways, they gave a siddur, but for most of B'nai Mitzvah, they had the siddur, and they used that as part of the training for their B'nai Mitzvah.
Right.
And so at one time, we thought it was,
Okay.
really didn't, it would be better to give them a matzor rather than a siddur.
Okay, that makes sense. I want to bring,
What's a matzor?
The high
What's a
holidays.
matzor?
The high holidays.
Just the high holiday book? Oh, I just call it the high holiday book.
I used to give this speech all the time about take this home, write it in it.
Oh,
Write about the bar mitzvah. If you open it up, you'll see your 13-year-old self again.
there you go. I didn't know that was the name of the book.
Yeah.
So those are prayers that are not included in the
So this is the Silverman Matzor
Yeah.
for the high holidays, okay? And it was replaced by this one, the Sim Shalom,
I think I
okay?
have that one also.
Right, so the Sim Shalom, okay, is really the best siddur. Well, I'm being recorded, so I shouldn't say that, but okay. But the Sim Shalom is really the best siddur that the conservative movement has done. And actually, it's not just the conservative movement. It was done by Rabbi Jules Harlow, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, who actually passed away yesterday, and today is his funeral in New York. I almost canceled this lesson and really went to pay, a tribute to him. He was a great scholar and
Must be Gene Holland.
an amazing friend also, and I got to work with him also and stay in their home. And he was a brilliant scholar, and he knew prayer so well, and he actually wrote a few prayers. One of them was even translated. I think there's a Finnish poet that translated one of his poems, and then it won some awards, like really big international awards. And the way he laid out the siddur, it was used for years over years in the conservative movement, and he had all the prayers in one book. Okay, and then later on, the conservative movement developed and wanted more and more to add. So this is just for Shabbat and holidays.
There was an updated one that.
Right,
came
just
out.
for Shabbat. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was an update.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if he even liked that, but because a siddur should really attempt to have it all in one, in one thing. Because if you want to pray from this on a daily basis, you can't. It's only for Shabbat and Yom Tov. So that's even then it doesn't even have the Torah readings. Which his smaller version, the paperback, even had all the Torah readings. So it was really very well done. So I also wanted to bring his memory today, that his funeral, and so if we're talking about prayer books in the conservative movement, to really mention a great giant of our times.
One of the sidurs I like is the old Hertz sidur.
Oh, the Chumash.
No, not the Chumash.
Oh.
The Sidur. It's
Oh,
about
I'm not
this thick.
familiar
I mean,
with it.
it's got everything in there. You got weddings.
Okay.
Besides just the.
Yeah, I'm not
services, it
familiar
contains
with
a
that
lot
one,
of
so maybe show that to me next time.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's just look at the contents. What are the contents that we have? So open at the beginning, and this is sort of like, this is what we've got. Although you should know that our synagogue has a few hundreds of these. If you want to, buy them, or if you want to start a competing synagogue next to us,
Why don't we send them to place it in
Yeah.
wherever,
Really need them.
Yeah, but every synagogue wants to do that. You could imagine every conservative synagogue in the country. Okay, they want to. So I see on the Rabbi's network every day is, we're giving out for free. You just have to pay for shipping. Okay?
Yeah.
You have to pay for shipping. And it's hundreds of these sidurim. No one's gonna.
There's one sidurim that we barely.
Actually, we are gonna give Rabbi Tal Sessler. So he's actually starting his synagogue that he's starting in the city needs these, so we're giving them.
Talk to him online.
We're giving to him.
You do?
Yeah.
I do.
Because
He has an amazing collection of sidurim,
Yeah.
that I saw.
So he's
last time I was
gotten better.
Yeah, he's
Wonderful.
much better now.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So if we open here the table of contents, okay, we will see that the Siddur is really trying to go throughout the whole day of what you do on a Shabbat and Yom Tov, the festivals.
I don't know if I'm on the right.
But
I need
but
content,
it's the
please.
aspects of the prayer. It's not. It doesn't. It's not what you're supposed to do at home, or or preparation, or that. But these are the different prayers that that you say. So for example, you have Shabbat and festival evening, right on page the Roman numerals 6. So you have the Shabbat and festival evening. So preparing for Shabbat. So if you turn now to page 3, okay, because it says go to page 3.
Yeah, you're in the wrong neighborhood. You have to tell me that, right? No, that's 20.
So you have preparing for Shabbat, and then it gives you like a nice introduction. And then on page 4, you have the actual blessing for Shabbat. Okay. Then on page 5, you would have meditations following the candle lighting, and these are really newer prayers that were written especially for this Siddur, which are really lovely. On page 6, we have the beginning of Kabbalat Shabbat, which is welcoming the Shabbat. So today I want to talk about the prayers of Shabbat. So the first prayer of Shabbat is a prayer that's called Kabbalat Shabbat. So when we come in Shabbat evening, it's really the services are divided into 2 parts. One is Kabbalat Shabbat, which is like welcoming the Shabbat prayers, and then usually the rabbi gives a sermon, and then is the Mariv service. The Mariv service is part of the 3 prayers we do every day. Okay? So the Kabbalat Shabbat is an extra added prayer that is just for Shabbat, and it's welcoming the Shabbat. Now, it's also a new concept that did not really exist before the 16th century. Before the 16th century, they did not have Kabbalat Shabbat. So how did this come, if something that wasn't done at the times of the temple, wasn't done at the time of the Talmud, when Jews were in exile in Babylonia or anywhere else, they didn't do it. How did it get into the prayer book of almost every part of Jewish traditions? So the answer for that is the rabbis in Tzfat in Israel. There was an immigration of rabbis that came from after the Spanish Inquisition. They fled to Turkey, and through Turkey they got to Israel, and they settled in Tzfat, and they established what we know as like the Kabbalah. Okay, the Zohar was written by Rabbi Luria, which is called the Hari HaKadosh, the Holy Ari. And they said that when we welcome the Shabbat, before we start praying the Shabbat prayers, we need to welcome in Shabbat in a more ceremonial way. And then there were a big uproar came up in the Jewish world. Says, well, who are you now in the 16th century to add more prayers to the prayer book? Okay, we're happy the way it is. And they didn't care that it makes it longer. What they cared about is that they're adding new prayers. So a lot of authorities went against that. But at the end of the day, as Kabbalah and the Zohar became more and more popular, this tradition of Kabbalat Shabbat began to take over all the different congregations. And here we are, 500 years later, doing Kabbalat Shabbat in almost every tradition. Some Sephardi traditions also do it. Some of them don't do it exactly the same way it is. And the way it's laid out is on page 7. They have the Song of Songs, which is done in Sephardi traditions, and they read the Song of Songs before. Then on page 10 is an introductory song welcoming Shabbat, written by Rabbi Eleazar Azikri, who is one of these rabbis that lived in Tzfat. And if you go to Tzfat until today, there's a cemetery there, and he's buried there, and on his tombstone is written this prayer, Yedid Nefesh. It's really beautiful. I have a picture. I'll bring that one day to you. Then there's a mikveh there that you go and it's freezing water. You dip at like midnight, okay, and then you do a tour of all the cemeteries, of all the sages. You feel very spiritual. It was quite an experience, although it was very cold.
When do you start it? Friday, what time?
So this is Friday, as you know, after sundown. These prayers, okay. So this is a beautiful prayer, and then on page 11 you start 6 psalms from the book of Psalms, from the Bible, which each psalm stands for a different day of the week. Okay, so you're sort of like supposed to sort of like meditate on what you did during the week, and these are these 6 psalms that go all along until page 21. Okay, and the theme there is like, Peter was asking before, what is the theme? So here the theme is about God's greatness and God's abilities to what he's able to bring to the people of Israel. A lot of it is about like singing a new song, and sort of like and as we go into Shabbat, asking God to give us sort of like that ability to refresh our lives, to bring new content, and to sort of like build that relationship with God in a new and stronger way. And then on page 23 is the Lecha Dodi, which is also a very famous prayer, and we would think it's very ancient, but no, that's also from Tzfat. It's from the 16th century. It's written by Rabbi Shlomo Halevi, which is Elkabetz, who was a popular and a mystic in Tzfat in those years, and he is also buried in that same cemetery as well. And these are basically different verses about how the people of Israel sort of like rise up from their despair and from exile and coming back to Israel, and as we accept the Shabbat and welcome the Shabbat, it's sort of like a parallel. We go out of the week that was like a hard week of working, etc. We go into we're sort of like being redeemed into the Shabbat. So in the same way, the people of Israel will be redeemed from exile into Israel. And at the end, we rise. On page 25, you see it says there in small red print, it says we rise and turn towards the entrance. Okay, so the reason we do that is we sort of like we feel that Shabbat is present and coming inside, so we welcome it and we go like this with our hands and we bow towards the Shabbat that's coming in. And if we look at what it says on page 25 on the left side in English, it says, "Come in peace, crown of your spouse, surrounded by gladness and joyous shouts. Come to the faithful, the people you treasure with pride. Come, my bride, come, my bride." Okay, and then we finish with the Lecha Dodi. "Come, my beloved, to welcome the bride. Let us greet Shabbat as she arrives." Okay, so it's sort of like, we look at it as sort of like the people a Shabbat is sort of like the bride and the people of Israel, and that bride are sort of like marrying each other. That's sort of like the covenant, like it's like the people of Israel are the bride of God as well. So there's like a special connection there that is, it's sort of like a metaphor to the relationship between the people of Israel and God and the people of Israel and Shabbat. Okay?
Those prayers in the synagogue, and then they go back home and have the Shabbat dinner.
Yeah, these are all in the synagogue. Yeah, these are all done in the synagogue. Okay? So that's the Lecha Dodi. An interesting prayer is on page 26, which is comforting the mourners. You know, when someone loses their loved one and they sit Shiva, they do not sit Shiva on Shabbat. Okay, Shabbat is a day that is forbidden to mourn. And during the week they have services at home, but on Shabbat they can't have services at home because that would be sort of like an expression of their mourning, which they're not supposed to do. They're supposed to rise from their period of mourning. They're supposed to shower, dress in nice clothes, as opposed to the way they were sitting during the Shiva, and they come to the synagogue. When they come to the synagogue during Kabbalat Shabbat, Shabbat is not in yet, okay? So they sort of like, they sit on the side. In some traditions, they even sit outside, okay? And when, after Lecha Dodi and us, we're sort of like welcoming the Shabbat, so then we welcome also the mourners into our community. So there's like a ceremony where we stand up, we welcome the mourners, and we say the verses that are here, okay? May the divine comfort you, along with all the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, and may you find comfort from heaven. There are different traditions, Sephardi and Ashkenazi, of what we say. And that's sort of like how their mourning period ends. I mean, or stops, it's on hold during Shabbat. When Shabbat is over, they go back home. I mean, they're at home, but they go back to mourning. Okay? So this is like, so we've done that tradition a few times in our synagogue as well. On page 27 is the 7th Psalm, right? So we said there are 6 Psalms that represent each one another day of the week. So now we're into Psalm 92, which is starts a psalm, the song of the day of Shabbat, Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbat, and that's sort of like how we welcome the Shabbat. Okay, and these psalms were not written for the prayer book. These are psalms that appear in the book of Psalms in the Bible. Okay, but they were adapted by the rabbis. They took them from the book of Psalms and they put it in the prayer book. There are a lot of other psalms that are not in the prayer book, but they chose these specific psalms. So we sort of like need to figure out, why did they choose these psalms for the prayers and not other psalms? Okay, yeah.
When did the specific psalms for, say, each day of the week come about, and how were they chosen?
They were chosen much later, but each psalm sort of like was done in the temple, apparently. And in the temple, they said that psalms, that the Levites were sort of like standing on the stairs, the ascending stairs of the temple, and they were saying every day they were saying a different psalm. And they chose that according to the way they looked at that day. But we don't have exact information of why exactly that psalm was chosen. So this is the part of Kabbalat Shabbat, and then it ends with the mourners saying the Kaddish. Although some synagogues, like our synagogue, only says the Kaddish once at the end of the service. So there are different traditions to how many times you say the Kaddish. After Kabbalat Shabbat on page 31, you have Shabbat study text. And there are different traditions of different texts that you study. Some are from the Kabbalah, from the Zohar. Some are from the Mishnah. And here in the conservative movement, they chose different ones altogether. But again, these are very nice paragraphs about the Shabbat that you study. And you the reason you do that is sort of like you separate between the Kabbalat Shabbat and the Mariv service. So you either, in some places also the rabbi gives a sermon, so that's also considered a study. But you're supposed to sort of like stop, pause between the prayers, study something, and then accept the Shabbat. And it's end on page 38 with another Kaddish, which is Kaddish de Rabbanan, which is de Rabbanan is Aramaic for the rabbis. And every time you learn a rabbinic passage, you're supposed to say this Kaddish. We don't say that. I don't know why.
Well,
right? We used to?
when I did Daily Minyan, we always used.
Okay. Okay, but we don't
Not
do it
on
on Shabbat? We never did that? Or-
Not on Shabbat that I
Okay.
can recall.
Interesting. Okay, it was yeah.
There are always great passages from the
A
Mishnah.
practical
I know.
question. When a rabbi comes to a new synagogue, how do you know what tradition is current in that particular synagogue, since there seems to be some variation from
Right. So
how do you-
you ask Larry.
Is there a book or is there a
Well, he's like a book. And
The rabbis are smart. They listen to what the congregation says, and then when they want to change it, they kind of nudge.
right. You bring it up in a meeting. It's like, oh, it's an interesting custom that How did you get?
Nobody sits in the back and goes, not here.
Oh yeah. If you add too much, so people was like, oh, we're not used to that. And if you try to say, well, get used to it, then you get in trouble.
Well, they go, it's 12 o'clock.
Right.
Whenever Larry is performing in the synagogue, I always go up to him and say, do the short version.
Right. So there's also inner pressure. It's not just rabbi. I mean, I really feel that prayer services have become long. Okay, long, even too long. It's like I know you would think the rabbis just want to pray and keep everyone, but I think that the art of saying what you want to say in a shorter form, I think has a lot of merit to it, especially when you have younger people and you want to get their attention and you want people to come to the synagogue and not feel it's like an exhausting experience. And I think we've all sort of like sinned to the point of having more straight to the point prayer services. And as I explained last time, what happened is that they started with a much shorter prayer. Okay, the prayer in the past was just the Shema and the blessings and the Amida, and that should not take more than 30 minutes. If you want to sing it all loud and and nicely, it could be an hour. Okay, the problem is that a lot was added to it, and then there's also the Torah service. Okay, the Torah service also takes an hour. So you add that together, you have 2 hours of services. However, that is a lot for some people. Okay, I see some people nodding here, and they're not little kids. Okay,
Especially for 13-year-old kids. 17 minutes is good.
So for kids, it's even considered longer.
Minimum 17 minutes.
Sometimes I also say you have to do 2 hours because some people want to be late. Like an hour and a half. So they only get to So what are you going to do if you're going to do just 1 hour prayer? They will come and everyone's like, okay, bye. We're already leaving. Right.
The lunch keeps them.
Yeah, the lunch, right. They're very disciplined about being there for lunch. So I think it's part of our challenge also to sit down and figure out, can we go to the more, a nuclear prayer, and also maybe not sing everything, and come to a service that is, still respectful of all these traditions, but, downsizes it to the main parts of services, so people do that are able to focus on it and go out with a positive, elevating experience. Okay, I have to be honest. I have a lot of thoughts and visions. But doing that is a very bold move. Okay, because although I'm a traditionalist rabbi, I'm more conservative with a small c than a lot of my other colleagues in at least in California. But cutting the services short is something that even the more liberal rabbis would oppose. Because they feel this is like the time people come to the synagogue. This is the experience. This is what people are used to. So we should at least keep that. But I know it's like an ongoing dialogue that I think.
Imagine singing it quickly and getting out.
Yeah.
Sing it and get out.
We could try, yeah. There are different attempts of doing things and how to do it, and I just started 7 months ago. So we're not going to change the world in one day.
Why do we have to say the Amida twice? See, I can't ever understand that. This wasn't good enough.
Okay, no. So that's a good question. That is because on Shabbat the second Amida is the Musaf, okay, and that's sort of like to embody the additional prayer that was done in the temple, okay, for Shabbat. It was like an additional sacrifice, so we do that. The thing is that the Musaf in ancient times was much quicker, was much shorter. But today they've added more and more liturgy to it, so it takes much longer to read it and to recite it. So that's sort of like that's sort of like what I'm saying. Like, can we go back to the more nuclear prayer and shorten it by that way?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
You talk about lengthening it. I grew up in an era where they read the whole Sedra from the Torah rather than the triennial, and then the person who was reading it always sounded like mumble, because they
did it very quickly.
Gotta get through it.
Right. So again, you also want to make sure it's done in a nice and respectful way. When we get to the Torah reading, we'll talk about that. So on page 39a, we did that already 2 weeks ago. So I'm not going to do it now. But you remember, these are the Shema and its blessings, what we talked about. So now, this is sort of like when prayer really needs to begin. Okay, talking about extending the prayer. So this is where it would start. And here we have the blessings before, on page 40 as well. Then on page 41, we talked about the Shema and the two other passages from the Bible on page 42. Page 43 is the blessings after the Shema. By the way, 43b is an interesting alternate. Okay, so this was written. Who wrote this one? This is Rabbi Saadia Gaon. It's a Siddur. It's a prayer book from the 10th century. Okay, so they brought into this is like, for example, a prayer that used to exist and does not longer exist, but they put it here sort of like to have an alternate prayer. It's really beautiful. And then on page 46, we have the Chatzi Kaddish, which is the half Kaddish. Okay, and that goes, maybe I need to stop for a second and explain. The Kaddish is an ancient prayer in Aramaic. And there are different versions of it. There's a mourner's Kaddish, which mourners recite. There is the Kaddish de Rabbanan, which is the rabbi's Kaddish that you say after you study something. There's the full Kaddish, the Kaddish Shalem, which is after the Amida, okay, or after Hallel. It's like after big chunks of prayers. And then there's the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, which is before central prayers. It's like before the Baruch Hu. It's before the Amida at night. Okay, so there are different Kaddishes, okay, and each one serves a different purpose. There's also a special Kaddish that you say at the gravesite. So these different parts of Kaddish are sort of like come to divide up the prayer into its different segments. Okay, so this is why we have so many times the word Kaddish in our prayer book.
What does Kaddish mean?
Kaddish
Word?
means to sanctify God's name. We could actually read the full Kaddish. Go on page. It would actually be a nice exercise to do that. On page 54. Do I have a lesson about the Kaddish? No, we'll do it today. So you see on page 54 on the left side, Kaddish Shalem, that's the full Kaddish. May God's great name be exalted and hallowed throughout the created world. Okay, which in Aramaic is, as is God's wish. Okay, Itkadal v'Itkadash Shmei Rabbah. Okay, Ba'alma divrach Yehutei. That's the first sentence. And then, may God's sovereignty soon be established in your lifetime and in your days and in the days of all the house of Israel. And we say Amen. Vayimlich malchutei b'chaychon v'yemechon v'chay dechol b'et Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imu Amen. That's that part. And then the congregation and the leader answer, may God's great name be acknowledged forever and ever. Yeheh Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulme'ol maya. And then the leader continues, may the name of the Holy One be acknowledged and celebrated, lauded and worshipped, exalted and honored, extolled and acclaimed, though God, who is blessed, is truly beyond all acknowledgement and praise, or any expressions of gratitude or consolation ever spoken in the world, and we say Amen. Okay, so Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shmei Dekudshah B'richu, Le'ilah min kol bichata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechmata, Da'amiran ba'alma, V'yimu Amen. Okay, and once a year we also say twice, Le'ilah u'le'ilah, which is truly far beyond all acknowledgement. And that's on the days of awe between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Okay, and then we say, may the prayers and pleas of all Israel be accepted by their Creator in heaven. And we say, Amen. Okay, Yehesh lama etikabal tzlaton u'vauton dechol Yisrael kadam uvon lifnei Amen. And then may heaven bestow on us, on all Israel, life and abundant and lasting peace. And we say, Amen. Yesh lama rabba min shmaya v'chaim alenu akol Yisrael v'yimu Amen. And then the famous passage, Oseh shalom b'momav v'yaseh shalom alenu akol Yisrael v'akol yeshvei tevel v'yimu Amen. In English it means, may the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us and to all Israel and to all who dwell on earth. And we say Amen. Okay, that part, and to all who dwell on earth, that's an addition of the conservative movement. It's not in the traditional Kaddish. It doesn't say to bring peace on all who dwell on earth. It's only on the people of Israel.
I mean,
Right?
I never saw that until Let Shalom came out.
Right.
So it is very recent?
Very recent, yeah. It's like from the last 10 years, 15 years, yeah. Very recent. And it sort of like says that, you know, we're not just asking for peace on the people of Israel, we're asking for peace in the entire humanity. Okay? Yes.
The last part doesn't sound Aramaic to me. It sounds like
That's in
modern
Hebrew.
Hebrew.
Right. There was one passage there. So, first of all, the Kaddish is in Aramaic, so people can understand it. Why can people understand it? People today, we don't know Aramaic, but today we know Hebrew, right? Okay, because that was the English of the ancient times. Aramaic was the lingua franca of the entire Middle East. So the Jews didn't know Hebrew also back then. They knew their local language and Aramaic. That was like the English of those days. The rabbis are the ones that knew Hebrew. They would know how to read Hebrew, the phonetics, but they didn't necessarily understand the meaning of it. So, but the Aramaic they knew. So this is how you would say Kaddish. And if you're mourning, and if you're not a literate Jew, and you need to say Kaddish, so you'd want to say it in the language that you're more familiar with. And the reason you're exalting God's name again and again here in the Kaddish is sort of like it's supposed to help a person who's mourning and who is, like asking for God's spirit to be with him. And by exalting God's name, you are sort of like proclaiming that you are accepting, God and his plan here on earth for you, and also, for your loved ones. So it's sort of like a very strong prayer where you are submitting yourself to God in a very deep way. So that's sort of like in a nutshell the explanation of that prayer. Okay. Then we conclude on page 56 with the Aleinu, and that's the another example. I said that also last week, of a prayer that was done once a year. Okay, and it was only done on Rosh Hashanah, which is the day where you anoint God as a king. And the essence of the Aleinu prayer is that we bow to you, acknowledge the supreme sovereign of God, and on page 57, where we read, "Kakatu b'toratecha Adonai imloch le'olam ba'ed, v'ne'emar v'aya Adonai le'mech al kol haaretz, b'yom mahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad." Oh, good job. Okay, so in English, yeah, right. So in everyone comes to services by Aleinu, so everyone knows it, right? It's the end of services. So on page 57, you can read in the left side the English, which is, "As it is written in your Torah, Adonai, God, will reign forever and ever. And as the prophet said, Adonai, God, shall be acknowledged sovereign of all the earth. On that day, Adonai shall be one, and the name of God one." Okay, so we are asking for God to rule over the entire world, and that was also the theme of Rosh Hashanah, where it's the first day of the year, the beginning of the year, and we're asking God to rule the world. So that prayer was only done once a year. Okay, and then some of the rabbis said, how could we not do it on Yom Kippur? That's like the most important day of the Jewish calendar, and they added it to Yom Kippur. And then other rabbis said, how could we not do it during the festivals? And Sukkot and Shavuot. It's like, oh, of course we have to do it. So they added there. And then some other smart rabbi said, we have to do it on Shabbat. That's like the most important day of the week. So they added it also on Shabbat. And you can actually see prayer books where it wasn't there. And you see how it evolved. And then someone even smarter said, every day is important, let's add it to every prayer of the day. And that's how prayers go and come longer. So I'm sure that if I bring a motion to the board, okay, to eliminate Aleinu, okay, right, from daily service, I think even Ronnie would not, would be upset, okay, right? Because that's a prayer. That's a prayer you're coming to, right? People at the end, right? Exactly. So here, you see, I want to make changes, and even the ones who want to make changes, okay. I was like, we could go back, right? Exactly. Could only be so liberal. So that's what happened. No, but seriously, people get attached to certain prayers and to certain melodies, and once you get used to it, it's hard to change. So this is the big dilemma.
Right.
I'm sorry?
But you also know Elena was at the end, and that's when you.
Take your car out the door.
Right.
That's why everybody likes it. I mean, the service is just
You can see
about.
that's
Elena means I'll see you.
Exactly. But on the other hand, if you want to cut down on prayers, how do we do it? Okay. Then on page 59, we could see different prayers that we say for different times of the year. For example, on page 57, we have Psalm 29, which we say only during the month of Elul, the last month of the month, and between Rosh Hashanah and until Sukkot. The end of Sukkot, we say a special psalm. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah, all the way through.
those are the prayers of Friday
that's not-
night, and I just
Yeah.
and on Shabbat
Somebody
it sort of like
using
repeats
a
itself in the
cheat
same way.
Yeah.
There is Psukei de Zimra, which you can find on page 100.
That was a good skill.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, page 101, which is prayers upon entering the synagogue.
Talk to him about that.
Page 103, which is blessings for a new day. Again, we're not going to go through all these prayers. And then on page 130, 122, we have Psukei de Zimra, verses of Psalm, and here we have an assortment of different psalms that we say before the Shacharit, the morning service begins. So again, there's like a long introduction to the prayer that became a tradition as was piled on as more and more prayers were entered and introduced. We don't do all of that, we skip a lot of those. But the more traditional synagogues have a big chunk of prayers to do before the services begin as well. And then we continue with the Shema and its blessings, the Amidah, then is the Torah service. We're going to have a special meeting about the Torah service. And then is the Musaf, which is that additional prayer that we say on Shabbat. And we're going to talk about that also next time. And then we have the closing parts of the prayer. And when I say closing, it means like 5-6 different prayers of closing the prayers. We don't just go to the Aleinu, we sing the Enkelohenu, we sing the Kaddish Shalem, we have Adon Olam, we have a few other prayers before we go and eat, okay? Each time, yes.
So, just looking at the topics that you have, it must be very new in the liturgy. Prayer for our country, prayer for soldiers, prayer for Israel.
Yes.
Very new to the
to
the book, to the Siddur.
Right, that's a very good point you're making, okay? And there are some prayers that even were added now in our century, okay? Like, for example, the prayer for the state of Israel,
Right.
okay? The prayer for our country, okay? That actually is not such a new prayer. Jews have been praying for the king and the prince of each, where they were, in every country. They prayed for the well-being of the king because they wanted to show that they're loyal citizens.
It is all live and be well, far, far away.
Yeah. So that's a very ancient prayer, and every country had prayed for their own king. In Hungary, they had a prayer for the Jews would pray for, I don't know, the king or whatever they had there. In England, they have a prayer for the king, so they have a Hebrew one and an English translation, or whatever, and they usually say that in the language of that country. Okay, very good. So we're done with the Shabbat prayers, or at least the introduction. We'll go more into them when we talk about different liturgical changes and new prayers as we go along. And any other questions that people have?
Sometimes it's almost as if each rabbi has their own favorite prayer, and way back, in order not to insult anybody, they just put everything in.
Well, I think that what happens is something starts as a custom. There's like, oh, why don't we add this psalm, okay, for this? Or why someone wrote a beautiful prayer, and he reads it, and everyone's like, wow, that's a really beautiful prayer. And they say, can you read the prayer you read last week? So they read it, okay, and then again and again. And then that rabbi dies, and it's like, oh, we got to keep reading this rabbi. We love him so much, okay? And then They just put it, and after 100 years, it's in the prayer book. Okay?
And nobody
it's
even
like-
remembers how it got there.
Right, nobody remembers how it got there. So we, and then it goes on and on like that. Although there are, I see like changes even in the Orthodox world. You know, there's these very long piyutim. It's like these, right, these like extra prayers that are done on high holidays. And even there, I see some Orthodox prayer books that put it at the end, and they say if you want to go back there, you could do it. And then I see a lot of minyanim that they no, we're not going to go back. We're just going to do what's in the siddur, because services become so long.
Some of the PUT have become popular.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them, but.
Some, right, and then they all only do the popular ones. So that's also an interesting phenomena that some places cut it down. Okay, but if you're like a real pious synagogue, you don't cut anything. You don't cut out anything. Okay, I have a friend from Bnei Brak, and he says I get on Yom Kippur. He gets to the synagogue at 6 in the morning, and he leaves at 7 o'clock in the evening. He doesn't leave for even 1 minute.
Wow.
Okay, he's like praying there 13 hours.
He needs to get
Does
right.
he bring us lunch?
No, it's on Yom Kippur. Yeah. So you don't
A
have
ham
to eat.
sandwich.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.